Let's go, folks.
Tony's trying to join right now. Oh.
Come on, Tony.
Sorry about that.
Michaela, get out of here. We got this.
Okay.
When I see should be sent. Can I get some sort of visual confirmation from everyone once they've received the document and are ready to go?
Haven't yet. 1 second.
Oh, sorry, I'll mute on FaceTime. Killed. Oh wait, I am muted. Nice.
I'm good.
Cool. Oh, I totally forgot to open the 1AC doc. Great. Okay. If anyone's not ready, please stop me now. Advantage 1 is open source communities for OSCs. Unregulated duty technologies being developed at an exponential pace and diffusing globally. Acquisition by omnicidal non-state actors to extinction via super pathogens, eco-terrorism, and prototype bombs. Taurus 21, power and accessibility to use emerging technology. Universally being developed at exponential pace of biotech, synthetic biology, nanotech, drone tech, AI, super pathogens combined. Lethality, incubating, contagious, incubation, pure, null, and biosphere, nanopods could disassemble organic matter, multiply number of non-state actors with capacity, intelligence, special effect constructions, lower most raw. Genomes already accessible, manufactured for zero cost. CRISPR genome drives that enable synthesis of genes. That's why entire population precipitate extinction for hyperglyph, target pollinator species, for extinction, organization of space, increasing privatized molecular nanotech, manipulates matter, open up space and few duties with technology, enables movement actors, and elevate humanity by converting astros to common plants by bomb state actors, also could cause extinction and states value their continued existence. Ethicists believe humanity should go extinct for moral reasons, believe harbor death, for any Socratic reasons, number of historical groups are proud about extinction to only means have been available. This emerging technology is being driven primarily by OSCs or online experts in specific technologies. Attempts to curve development will inevitably fail, spurring OSC backlash. No one always team. We have entered new era technology, knowing about capabilities no longer enough of exponential effects of a single technology. Can bear 30 depending on rapid action levels, will needed to employ in the world to battle between government makers, an anonymized community, and using decentralized encrypted designs. OSC responsible for driving technology, lockdown innocent people involved as a path of failure to government lacks access, expertise, and capacity. Rapid evolution, pace of advancement, efforts to restrict all teaser and effective result in inhibit evolution. Online communities have access to fighting and balance, protecting necessary for enabling innovation, will keep public safety and ethics central. If you to consider potential threat factor, address potential threat factors, can deny the government and law enforcement opportunity to engage, resulting in reactive policy, unnecessary restrictions, and dangerous gaps work together, mitigate threats while maximizing benefits. Open source intel enables effective regulation of emerging technology, including metamaterials. Save us all 21 cyber domains can primarily focus on revealing latent military value, 5G, blockchain, AI, and internet and military. Link sensor 3D printing is a game changer, and nanotech is a ubiquitous feature of energetics, experience, visibility, close percent opportunity, change commercial world of immediate impacts, and identifying right technology, develop them and fielding them effectively. Depends on the right partner, change technology, geopolitics, commercial sector, consequence for content proliferation, benefits and network trusted experts who provide substantial knowledge. Unregulated metamaterials escalate geopolitical hotspots and increase instability, extinction, coastal, and state in 20 is security dominant, increase conflict states, maximize their own security, less than threat on the states and uncertainties created. A cycle is bound to arms, and material camouflage could complicate HUAD scenarios, camouflage from ensure FOM to the theater by countering Chinese capabilities and complicating Iranian swarms, Chinese vessels become more brazen than SES before a force multiply for Iranian boats and security created by metamaterials, adds tension, increase instability, and metamaterial camouflage diffuse as far as states and states and trafficking organizations attain visibility, capability, their ability to cross border to be enhanced, perhaps from warring against trafficking and WD, chemical, biological, nuclear crossing a border into a city attack is significant that independently cyber privateering it crushes illicit funding streams for organized crime groups. As Kissinger 13 report estimated $1.6 trillion in money laundering, prosecuting less than 1% later market increase, and shutdown new avenues, illicit funding motivated by possibility returning number with the Legion cyber privateers removing illicit funds would be a death blow for criminal organizations, rogue machines, later mark would invest entities with authority to digitally seize illicit funds for fighting legal protections. COVID makes organized crime groups uniquely dangerous. The brink is now Kennedy 215. A second wave of COVID horse the economy to seize emerging crime groups are positioning to swoop in and seize political control. Cartels of exploited crisis consolidate power countries like South Africa, Brazil, and India will lost for the line between no crime militancy and collaboration on profitable illicit industry support political ambitions, accommodation, geography, like and great government structures to make current states vulnerable to infiltration. Failed states cause great power intervention, extinction, Kriegel 9 failed states off special great power war in the past conflict war, great power intervention, draws great power intervention, different from humanitarian disasters, military and no action most likely, multilateral cooperation impossible, interests not engaged nation able to establish a food will inconnect to combine with great power protection capability creates incentives to intervene, absent a legal option, inevitable unregulated private sector hackbacks, risk kinetic escalation, goes to go 20, risk of private actors attribute too quickly and low certainty reaction a disproportionate way in counter-hacking prompt intervention and lead to escalation and destabilization world order printing hacker cannot realistic companies already responding ACD will continue private actor will be allowed to act specific attack under control of state non-licensed actor to hack back to the licensed company selected basis on cyber expertise and standards that determine ACD included this as lawful and serving collaboration between states and major companies guideline and service of building block creation international norms states and private sector need to work together establish common cyber principles. The plan solves first capacity using the privateer clause to authorize the contracting of OCs as cyber privateers enables effective threat response to SNO 15. Counter robust and corporate tools attract and back to features require OC's autonomy and execution and operation require paradigm shifts into around trust and freedom action. Reinvigorating privateer costs under constitution utilize cyber privateers and locate criminals and individuals receive commission from state boundaries already exist reward programs. Cyber privateers enable extra level cyber policing focus on threat actor warning interdiction fusions and community future policing. International intel specialized force will be developed to form tactical cyber SWF teams SWF and corporate capacity expertise available by OC partners or cyber privateers. OCs are uniquely key. The government lacks the capacity, expertise, and digital intelligence. SNO 15 incorporating OCs in policy development process invited the part of harmony with law enforcement ensure internet secure while building capacity access and expertise to identify future threats near the law enforcement know the military national efforts internal expertise effectively compete everybody support from groups and building OC base capability transnational network of access around the globe conduct operations worldwide subject matter expertise provide insight on attacks method to prevent how to prevent improve system resiliency and attribution ability to operate autonomously demonstrate path leveraging OC access and enforce existing laws government can say a leading edge of all by crafting guarded strategy grounded in digital environment experience ability to evolve as tech evolves law enforcement ability become borderless those things become a cornerstone of those efforts rules of engagement and authorization make cyber privateering safe and effective casting 13 cyber letter mark required to register essentially out of means cyber policing cyber privateers and holding them accountable if applicant does not possess records or kills them request is denied as deep on assure cyber privateers adhere to congressional rules letter mark grants authorization to conduct the hackback notify national security for found operation and cyber privateers exceed commission it was bond face department open the criminal prosecution transactions were outside the government community granted by letter mark all cyber mark orders to report activities progress to central authority de-conflict issues interrupting operations cyberspace and to be in a better position to work with cyber privateers. Second is law incorporating OCs into the policy development process restores trust and collaboration that's vital to effective U.S. policy and streamline intel sharing. SNO 15 OCs offer valuable insight regulation won't be its collaborative process which stakeholders in if sharing is over transparent outreach necessary to repair relationship with isolated OCs share cultural norms ethics are instinct core and critical OCs functions ambassadors impact reputation credibility communities will be more open to collaboration parties as shared culture set expectation risk prevent that actors from explaining expertise and focus policy development and expectations can impact illicit actors temperature control technology create backdoors restrictive and should be avoided binding OCs policies are key anything else both fails and backfires fail to represent OC norms lead to decentralization anonymization and compliance that affect the SNO 15 failure of current policy efforts and digital ROMs due to three factors. Is it impossible to punish an actor for digital action within your jurisdiction? Basic efforts require months of paper collaboration before they can move forward. Current legal framework lacks flexibility to address complexity of RLTs and existing law is ineffective policy. Decentralization, anonymization, combines that effect. It starts in fact motivation, crowding or diverse policies, and incorporates cultural norms that develop with conflict and normative orders. If across regulation fails to understand norms, legal norms will be limited, increase complexity and usage. Thus the plan. The United States federal government should enact reform in policing crime via letter mark and reprisal. Advantage choose LMRs or letters of mark and reprisal. Space systems are vulnerable to attack from a variety of sources, including ASATs, EMPs, lasers, and cyber attacks. Random and Rouse 15. Space systems are enablers for successful military info transfer, diplomacy, and collaboration, providing communications, warning, intel, surveillance, and defense systems to risk from attack include kinetic, non-kinetic, and cyber small states, even attacks simultaneously, sequentially, vulnerable to ASAT advising identity laser operation, we burn out from space systems, have vulnerable CNC chambers, could disrupt and confuse systems, states are not science fiction, road sets, lens, 7 terror, satellite destruction, accomplished by given commands to transfer control and plugging strategies on real six accomplished by open radio frequency communication, absent LMRs, military responses to incidents involving commercial space assets, make escalation inevitable, random and rouse 15, ability to advertise increasing daily global engagement does not seem to increase security, there's a single attack fix against solve affordability and resilience connection from commercial space industry is thriving and maybe motivated partner in space is here and to perform active defenses including kinetic, non-kinetic, and cyber. This for complete complement passive defenses, operators to fate or reduce effectiveness of attacks. Half of military status, almost all global infant networks, commercial SATCOM also be at risk. Privateers are rapidly, effectively, and efficiently respond to threats with space systems. So must obey LOECU statutory scheme. Discourage operators from conducting effective offensive strikes. Legal obstacles must be surmounted. Corporate space owner right to serve with SEC obligation requires disclosure with corporate interest. 18 UC interfering with satellite subjects party defined and imprisonment operational exemption under letter mark would be required. Congressional authorization of letters of mark and reprisal for cyber pirates to reinvigorate over other issues specifically in space. It's Rice and Board 15. With cyberspace being ever expanding, issuing letters to empower Congress to tap existing human capital to fight cyber pirates for Congress CEOs will be just one opportunity. Once concept is implemented, strategic values realized, letters could be innovatively used. Congress will participate in foreign policy actions. Congress Constitution empowers it. With letters, Congress is systematically seated as role of national security. Doing nothing should not be the only option. Issuing letters will prepare Congress to reinvigorate greater strategic thinking and action during a critical moment of creativity needed to address gaps and capabilities. Congress should defeat itself from decades old nurturing conduct of foreign affairs. Residual vulnerability in commercial space assets lacks in preemptive military doctrines. Goes nuclear, stressed all 19. Dependence space assets increasing strategic values. First role of ASAT weapons, China, Russia, India, countries field system engage satellites envelop them in the force vulnerability and enforce the space system military operations incentivize first strike strategies. Destroy space assets increase military capabilities. Actors know about vulnerability. The space systems are vigilant. If vigilance increases crisis stability, causes elastic keys to lose assets for the increased stability. This is reward effect of starting reaction escalates wider. War deterrence requires awareness, attribution, resilient assets response to be timely and proportionate time free. Escalation and decision making increase stability. Environmental monitoring satellites check against ozone loss, deforestation, extinction. Williamson 8. Decided we should have voted monitoring Earth's environment broadly. It's ideal to capturing data. Each work towards deforestation, ocean pollution, other environmental threats, and providers info about how to cover to make life on Earth possible. Ozone loss, filters, CO2, severe weather, other space systems, and U.S. satellites create up near near Earth asteroids. Warden 2, the ultimate dangerous near Earth asteroids impact wipe out 90% of species smaller than what impacts on the MRF may take under nuclear attack. Use the need to be able to adjust the operate space surveillance only. Government the system is type or DoD early warning sensors distinguish asteroid impact from nuclear detonation. The ability to deflect objects is under development. Mark the card at under development.
You good?
Yeah.
What's a letter of marque and reprisal?
A letter of marque and reprisal is a letter deputizing cyber privateers in the context of the AF. It's under Article 1, Section 8. Congress has the constitutional power to authorize these.
Okay, so they asked Congress.
Most likely interpretation normal.
Okay, why is that key to solving unregulated open source tech stuff?
The snow evidence is really good in this question, or I guess there's a lot of snow evidence, but the snow evidence on the sovereignty page is really good. It indicates that the government currently lacks the capacity, expertise, and access. Cyber privateers enable all three of those things. I can explain like the individual.
Like, who are cyber privateers? There's like these like hackers in the basement and hack stuff. Is that what it is?
Sort of. They're more like white hat hackers who have.
Yeah, that's good. That's why.
Like,
okay, who prosecute? Okay, so you make cyber pirates better at doing their job. That's the argument.
Pretty much.
Okay, I'm gonna take the rest.
They don't like have a job in the status quo because they're not being hired.
It's the equivalent of hiring new police officers because letters of marque deputize them, which gives them policing authority.
Starting real prep 10 minutes. 819.
Okay, I am sending it now. The order will be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 off, advantage 1, advantage 2. Oh, hold up. We created a conflicted copy. I'll take a second.
Continue prep.
Okay, stop prep.
That was 10 seconds.
The order is still the same. It is sent. Is anyone not ready? Cool. Subsets, subclasses are formed the whole area. 1, it means Star Wars surprising and should mean throughout. 2, the means whole web serve. 5, the use of 4 not to game reference to group as a whole. Vote neck for limits allowing subsets exposed to top of the thousands. That was small small changes. Next up is the infrastructure binds political capital gets to the finish line white. And for all plan whatever about routes support goes up and they're buying a significant PC chronic gives the right opportunities to do big things. Bears some so much FDR WG and Reagan wants to do more BFGs. Bindings are already he knows how to seize the moment this time it include chance getting Joe energetic CGR trades off Hamlet and 112. While he can force Congress to push back, make it hard to deliver on CGR, he will need Congress to run one of the most aggressive criminal justice platform of any candidate in years. Line facing constraints to government slow time and PC limited infrastructure solves non-linear existential threats, payment storm, and 15% of threat human civilization, parts of vulnerable when connected to reinforce the versus spread in spill over into critical infrastructure. A small disruption causes non-linear effectively networks are struggling coupled into fighting globalization while government system adequate fair cascade infrastructure damage trigger suicidal cost far out approach initial disruption secondary effects collapse conflict and starvation is cause great depth collapse spreading and undermine common ecosystem, the collapse, loss of trade poverty, and worse, the climate change, something to be monocultures. Next off is the advantage cap when the United States federal government should decrease government hacking and cyber operations, making it take measures to harden space systems, prohibit military retaliation to space attacks, and increase indirect efforts to and financing policing against organized crime. Next off is uncooperative federalism cap when the 50 states should condition cooperation with federal initiatives on the United States reforming policing via a letter of marque and reprisal. It solves and leashes the federal government revalues uncooperative federalism. Leave in 13. States nullify federal law when intensifying the conflict of supremacy cause and stop the states from thwarting of federal laws, especially marijuana, real ID, healthcare, firearm regulation. States creative as federal monster time to get the Lucia court ruled that the police could not be compelled to carry out the federal laws can't be enforced by the Fed if every state enough states resist. It's difficult for the Fed to force laws down our throats. Solves warming Western and 18 states push on COP to push Fed to a new position to push COP push of course is tolerated conflict away to increase renewable sources of commerce cause restriction states attempts to legislate foreign affairs. Thus the U.S. lead innovation allocating to states that could pave the way for the U.S. to be lead instead displaying a reluctance. This allows a better relationship to the U.S. will contribute meaning the country's exploitation extinction. You in 19 cause extinction due to non-linear cascading effects to multiple factors. 10 points abrupt ice sheet collapse cause rapid sea rise, drying of force increases fires oceans release methane producing runaway even modest warming co-explosive population heat stress making extinction likely more important avoid by a trillion times.
The advantage counter plan, this is the text.
Advantage counter plan, scratch other one, new text. The United States federal government should increase the government hacking and cyber operations, take measures to hard space systems that prohibit military retaliation and space attacks, and increase the indirect efforts in financial policing against organized crime. Mission to send that out. Next off is a double trouble counter from the United States for just an executive branch to interpret all relevant laws as referring to policing their crimes via letter marking and reprisal. Congress is dysfunctional. All the branches solve coalition. 15. Sloppy legislation empowers the executive to figure out what law will be written in prominent issues. The courts be the decider. Justice think Congress is incapable. They play handyman. A majority insists on the text was misleading. Congress is far from incapable. The courts will engineer a policy. It makes it hard to envision Congress at the helm. Next off is the case. Cybercrime is a new moral pandemic that pins criminality as the state-defined insidious hacker. It conceals elitist corruption, bolsters techno-capitalism, banks in 18 hegemonic ideologies. Ideologies hide in the crimes of domination, radical criminology, asserts their crimes egocentric greedy Being behavior inherent in capital society. Criminal labels are formulated by the powers of criminal justice creates a working class in black scapegoats who track gaze away from the richest criminogenic crimes are economic dominations are ignored. The dangers are by specific groups are inflated, harnessing anxieties. The government's aligned to construct hackers, omnipresent threats. Capitalism's reliance on digital resources makes hacktivists pose threats to say asylum just to respond to crimes by release working to unearth the wrongdoers of the law. Enforces depicts activists as dangerous criminal behavior concerns to be all out of proportion. Anxiety is manufactured to conceal good for criminality. Those who pose danger to information, the informational capital society, commercial imperialism, depressive manifest cybercrime is a criminal and reinforce a culture of fear to further intensify data collection, which is targeted to populations to delegitimize claims to infringe on human rights, labeled to legitimize the public protest activities to disrupt capital society. Extra disposed to precautionary to guard against criminal victimization and conditions marked by the relationship between the force to produce fear and proxy security has become intertwined with accumulation. The card at accumulation, the neoliberalism causes operates through securitizations, operative logic, and militarization of endless wars. The conditioning of populations redirect their precarity towards sustaining the national security state. This driving force behind the House Impact Grendel in 17. Preeminent wars become the hegemonic logic. Neoliberal security, state security, militarized surveillance always led to the threats to security effects. Neoliberal policies that contribute to inequalities, this create and security attempts to produce more insecurity. Neoliberalism has altered subjectivities to leave the state as security states a product of the regimen. Assumption of neoliberalism, American neoliberalism connected to the military. That's includes the wars without an environmental security decrease some the differences as well as the management of militarized powers to contradictory resolved by neoliberal militarization through securitized systems, myriad insecurities that manage security connected system through the state through militarization. Cut the card at militarization. The alternative is to reject the 1AC mirror and 14 ecological systems are topsoil loss of groundwater depletion. It guarantees extinction, social crisis, alternatives to structural analysis, dismantle the neoliberal socialization underpin the planned vote, negative system prediction is fundamentally unethical mirror, and 14 ecological systems are topsoil loss, groundwater depletion, and chemical contamination, dead zones, species extinction, biodiversity could cause destruction of the biosphere, ecosystem nearing tip points, capitalism producing social inequalities, the global scale, people locked into suffering, perpetual growth will be a population central, so responsibility call attention to the powers of inequality to critique to which they emerge the product, inequality is not part of a vacuum, but instead social systems, social analysis, subject systems to searching critiques, radical positions, not mean we have all the viable answers, however, we are to address social inequality problems, so for all terms, we need to understand the problems to explore these social systems and producing inequality and ecological sustainability. We have an obligation to not seek from our predicament. Next off is T policing. Policing refers to subset law enforcement directly involved in the criminal justice system. Is only government officers. Cosner 11 law enforcement includes agencies and enforcement codes. Policing refers to subset law enforcement. Policing is observed through prosecution of crime violation. Violation of plans just criminal law. Vote neg 1 limits any adjustment in criminal law creates thousands of new cases. 2 is ground defining crime. Obviously, core ground because it does directly impact law enforcement officials, which is what policing is. Case. All their terrorism impacts aren't essential. Walton 13 is some of the most exaggerated threats that never come close to topping the governments of millions of threatening the lives of majority of incompetent most are even short of geniuses stage small attacks that are caused modest harms to the capital of orchestrating a complicated opposite non close to existential threats. No emerging tech impact Schleicher and 13 history of tech councils against alarmism. Tech could not live up to promise and having a counterfeiting effects that temporary consequences. Emerging tech will cause some changes. Policies will be threatened to caution very few. Reshaped competent most innovations that amounted to incremental will disappear despite hype that tech take decades of the airplanes that takes illustrate the exact easy to exaggerate effects of tech today's tech have countervailing effects of stabilizing under same conditions, stability others factors of media effects of geology and material powers of strategies of domestic policies and culture. No organized crime impact. 18. There's no variation of crime groups that perpetuate territories. Few of polycrimes that contain physical materials of terrorism. Relationship is not from with the violence groups that work with cooperating with the military groups and drawing attention to security. No impact to failed states. We would never intervene. Skip it. OCOs don't escalate sourcing and 19 cyberstates self-dampening mechanisms appear in place at the time instead take the attribution to the right means that plenty of think twice to lean into diplomatic measures. A large investment required to develop the offensive territory, temporary and dependent on rapid replacing vulnerabilities. Cut the card at patching vulnerabilities. Advantage 2. No space wars in air. Anything we all humans utilizing in space for military over 60 years. There hasn't been a war in space. Treaty law has made clear space as a peaceful proposals. Consequences of first satellite tech would be significant for each one day. There's access to disaster because there's so dependent ozone and deforestation is an impact. These are 2 lines. No internal like a nor terminal impact to them. Chance of an asteroid, small walker, and 16. A large asteroid hits the Earth doesn't mean an extinction for humans. We are not due to extinction. Next giant impact is not likely to happen millions of years into the future. We are almost later a chance of no giant impacted. The next century, we have a 99.9999% sure that there is an extinction level asteroid heading our way. We know the orbits of all Earth and near Earth comets. There's 1 in 100 million per century. So far, the future doesn't make a difference. Go back to other advantage. No hapax impact. Listen, 20 non-state actors in the United States are capable of a cause of physical damage, muscles, catastrophes. Either stuff that's about the ability to attribute to 1 link service of retaliation. No one died, and cyber is unlikely lazy to assume they'll use nuclear nukes. Nukes. Meacham says he sent everything that we additionally read.
Yeah. Okay. Are you good for Cossacks?
Status of the counterplans in the K.
They're conditional. Status quo is a logical policy option. Judge kick is good.
The courts counterplan, how do the courts interpret, how do the courts in the executive branch interpret law to authorize letters of marks and reprisals? Like, how do they reinterpret the Constitution?
You just said in the YC cross-ex that it's outlined in Article 1. It just, the courts just interpret it as that is the law, and cyber piracy is legitimized, and the executive follows through with that.
So the courts interpret Article 1, Section 8, which says only Congress has the authority to do that, to somehow mean that
The Constitution also says that the judiciary has the authority to interpret the Constitution. So yes.
How can they change the like? In what world does only mean?
They don't like change the language; they interpret the language. The law is not like self-fulfilling. Law is interpreted in such a way by the judiciary that makes it mean a certain thing in cases, and the executive follows through with that. Congress just authorizes.
Yeah, they like interpret.
Also, who's going to strike down the counterplan? We have the judiciary.
Okay, the K. What does the alternative do about status quo cyber policy?
The alternative is a way for academics and people inside debate to analyze things like the plan to see how they interact with neoliberalism to critique that interaction.
So it's not.
We're gonna make turns case and root cause claims. The link card is about how your fear mongering over private actors and cyber is a tool of the elite to justify elite monopolization over cyberspace, and
so
protect
it's
their own
not. The
financial
alternative is not
activities.
material, correct?
It's something that could be material. Like arguing that activists and academics should adopt this sort of view and praxis towards the world.
Okay, but how does the alternatives like reorientations within a debate space spill up?
Well, we think voting negative for the alternative would be an endorsement of that pedagogy and that rejection of neoliberalism.
Okay, the uncooperative federalism counterplan, the internal link evidence assumes the Trump administration. How do you think you have
It does
access to
not.
climate impact?
Incorrect.
I mean, it's from 2018, so I think
It's
we'd
talking
probably
about
assume
how
it's
the
Trump
federal
administration.
government is inactive on warming policies, which is just as true under Biden. And it says that states need to push renewable energy stuff. It talks about how the Commerce Clause is restricting them. It talks about how reinvigorating uncooperative federalism allows states to have a position to push renewables.
Why does Biden like prevent current climate things in the status quo?
It's the inaction at the federal level. It's not that Biden will directly preempt state efforts, but it's the Fed's not doing anything.
That's not why uncooperative federalism is necessary. Whatever. I don't have time.
Our argument is the states need to have policy space. They don't feel that they have it now.
It's sent. Okay, order. Actually, I'll wait until people are good for an order. Okay, order is case in the order of OSCs, then LMRs, then T subsets, then T policing, then the advantage counterplan, the double trouble counterplan, the uncooperative federalism counterplan, the K, and the disad. Wait, am I? I'm going to take a little bit of prep because I just got a sinking feeling that I'm missing something. So 10 minutes. Okay, 9:51. I think I'm good. All right, can I get a thumbs up when people are ready? Cool. Collaboration with OSCs enables effective threat response. Multiple impacts. One super pathogens, underneath pathogens are designed to kill. None of their evidence assumes combining lethality, transmissibility, incurability, and a long 2, eco-terrorism, nanobots that can be designed to destroy all organic matter and pathogens can be made to kill all pollinators, which our life depends on. 3, planetary bombs. People use technology to move asteroids and weaponize them. That's Tory's evidence. 4, metamaterials. People can manipulate energy like light and sound. Invincibility, destroy secure second strike capability, enables WA trafficking, both increase instability, which escalates as a causal evidence independently defense also organized crime. COVID is a bring since groups are poised to take for failing governance now, but dependent on illicit funding field states for script per couple. That's Gregor there. First argument doesn't assume new tech developments or the combination of lethality, transmissibility, and incurability, which I explained above. But 3D printing, specific 3D printing or other types of technology makes lowers the barrier for access, which is just no evidence. They say no tech impacts. You should default to our specific evidence about emerging tech that's coming now, as opposed to just generic posturing about technology. Now, this no crime impact. Yes, impact. Our card is not about what the organized crime groups do themselves, but rather perception of larger states seeing other states as failing, which causes intervention, which causes great power war, which this card does not answer. Now, this OCO's argument, it doesn't assume destabilizing attacks or private sector hacks, and it definitely doesn't assume miscalculation. Just as that people don't think they'll be able to attribute, but it doesn't assume when private companies make themselves look like other groups, which causes more retaliation, which also answers the no hackbacks argument. Now, the LMR's advantage, LMR self-commercial space, SF vulnerabilities, satellite vulnerabilities, incentivize military preemption, collapses information sharing, risk and miscalculation, that shells independently heated monitor deforestation, ozone levels, and top asteroid strikes, as Williamson and Ward in the first argument. Yes, Space Force doesn't assume or any vulnerable systems currently, which cause use and loose pressures and first strike incentives for other countries to try and get the advantage in space. Now, this analytic they made, you should default to actual evidence on this. Our evidence does say extinctions. They don't give them a bad analytic. They say asteroids. The asteroids don't happen. This is about large asteroids which are causing extinction through hitting the Earth. Our impact evidence is about smaller asteroids being look like a nuclear attack, which causes miscalculation, which they did not answer. T. We actually meet T-subsets. They have changes the entirety of policing by creating a new process through which the police LMRs countertrip in its within. That's 50 means within the limits of these operations. So we don't have any 31st reference to the word substantial. It's particular prefer a 1 grammar. The rest is in policing implies action taken inside the broader category. 2% they've no intent to define or exclude and define police reform, not policing. 3 F ground. They live at the top of the 3 F, so they have no answers to states or courts kind of plan. Don't have potential functional limits and enact check. T policing. We meet 1 Plantex that's policing. If we aren't that, then we're sentencing or forensic science. Plantex and vacuum is only to stand a question of solvency, not topicality. 2 the plan reforms the policing of cyber profiteers. That's Kessinger. 3 cyber profiteers are granted the authority of policing. That's Snow. Counter policing is a function involving state license law enforcement. The cause are Article 13 law and enforcement of all of the exceptions on the internet for subset law enforcement work that has a safety and the policing question the subset investigation and prosecution crime and terminal policing of the law enforcement and enforcement of police for 1 price limits are interp excludes their case the complaining policing and police force bodies to Baker. Oh wait, is there any way of defining policing as a sentence which the term of the systems of surveillance of the purpose of civil policing and corporate surveillance of damage and organized activity ensure security prevention deterrence investigation resolution and punishment. 2 Afghan they structurally good fed keywords which helps policing education by forcing advantages mechanisms impact on federalism. 3 intended to find scholarly sources to find the words in the resolution are the most predictable. Prefer reasonability defer against punishment for small infractions. That advantage can apply perm do both perm to the counter plan. Not having a solvency advocates voter impossible to predict because it's not based in the lit and we don't have good answers. There's no answers in the lit. Can't solve. The government does not have the capacity nor the intelligence to improve their defenses, which is the snow evidence from the 1AC. The counter plan is worse. That it spurs anonymization, decentralization, and compliance with that effect because OSCs are upset that they aren't involved in the process, which is the other snow evidence. And condo is bad because strangers are going to punish the bad ones. These words smart 2 ECs, which causes increased research for deterrence. Dismal solves links to net benefit. Still does cyber profiteers, which requires Congress. I have no idea what the net benefit to this counterplan is because it still takes PC and uses up floor time. The double trouble counterplan perm to the F is implementing statute for the counterplan. Agent counterplans are a voting issue. This steals the F and makes their form good bad debate. Perm do counterplan links to net benefit. Obviously, a court ruling authorizing a congressional power would cause fights in Congress. Can't solve 1 legal exemption. Only Congress can create oversight for exemptions from laws. Otherwise, blanket law enforcement risk escalation. That's no. And ATL legislation solutions come to more action to restrict office law enforcement secret difference apart from invest in not authorized for those no mechanism restrict and the purposes of critical blocks only government about anything but it's a solution here. Some policy cannot be perfect companies but authority to break laws and to show to be critical but actions cannot do better limit LMR important to avoid escalating reports such as efficient for shorting use of industry for defense policy insurance office to avoid especially hard to remain in mechanisms to empower private companies. 2 LMRs only Congress has the power to issue them. Feeding through their precedent causes wars. It's bullying and Clark's 7 article Congress power to issue elements of original 30 judged by the definition of inform not capable of Congress is the Constitution and the consensus on the proposal of the peace and security. Now the uncooperative federalism counterplan perm do counterplan agrees CDR should be enacted without consultation. Counterplans that circumvent the S inherency are voter advocating the entire form undermines core of offenses hurts topic education by shifting the debate to trivial process questions potential to feel the plan was neg racist asymmetry irreparably sees the debate perm to the plan all 50 states and territories should not cooperate with federal initiatives. logical intrinsicness is good. Key to check back against non-specific dissets, uncooperative federalism, causes war that's called McLennan. So let's in confidence military exists with one fits with reflex response on American foreign policy and confident keep foreign policy question objectives doesn't solve a sin yet. This Carter 19 Epstein for federal and BD destabilization thumbs or solves this coordinator and Trump to play from other functions perm debate the plan is to follow on the eternal doesn't assume Biden, who's obviously doing warming things now and no net benefit. They never heard spillover evidence in Republican states. We don't do anything to solve warming. No impact. That's far worse as definite limits likely warming unlimited consequences accident times humanity adaptive even like that would take action long before 10%. Now the K framework will justify it. The value decided implementation based on a scope of solvency. First, predictability checks infinite gross rates should include offensive reach and analytics but of returns with alts, not exclusive sectors rejoining domestic cultural relevance with pedagogy and error replication and is only conventional being determined when there was zero link. We didn't read a cybercrime impact, but the app is desecuritizing this burden of need to be need to be for such 20 decisions after some sensitive plus and sizing that some second decisions to be shifted away from the business side of Mr. 40 not in the 10 this excellent military some could play greater role in involved not just we're working with tech companies working to get information between because need to be in place to transport them to the after this purpose of social security involved in civil sector president but responsible to social actors be more to software faster and have fewer concerns in perm do both cases just the alt open source tech is coming now perm to the plan and all non-mutual parts of the alt the disad links backwards. One plans bypass this rated idle fiction actions purpose side by side by putting currents abilities being but has a dealing with perfect actor items of passive from charity to some of the council must give the right of different flank clear considerations to military that's Garrett interpretive so we can flipping after start Congress and but supposed to one just spends shields PC that's a hard captain the only time that the is when it's involved that my sent but the weapon damage is hip military it's important to stop from military because it has been since unpopular puts the military in any regard. And Biden's already pushing cybersecurity and infra and elsewhere. Winners win. That's the Elving for doing something to not the time to try to certified for college and even to make less conductive stuff than just on our frustration a lot of discussion looking for something to do for Kindle and national parties if you votes going to be rather some those people are very appreciative even if don't say so PC city if you do this business to frame to put in lots of FDR and LBJ will pass its Spindle 14 will try reconciliation there's your rapid the temperature it's a big amount it's going to cancel but it has any creates an under steps and putting support clinches and putting cultural life support from the deal from effort for the other parties like control police and voting rights to take up.
We're gonna take some prep. 809. $720.
Okay. First, theoretical reasons to reject the team.
Condo solvency advocates, counterplans that circumvent the app's inherency, agent counterplans, fiating illegal things. I think that was it.
Which counterplan did you say was illegal?
The court's an executive counterplan.
Okay. Let's talk about uncooperative federalism. What is logical inherency or logical intrinsicness?
If you don't read a link to the AF for like the dised, that's the internal net benefit, then the counterplan is not germane, or like the dised isn't a real opportunity cost. So we think it could definitely be done on something else.
Okay, so that makes sense. This thing about the first card you read on this is about international arena. Why does this counterplan link to this?
Because it does it over the plan. The plan inherently acts, or involves the international arena because cyber privateers are thus deputized and able to like conduct operations against other countries.
Can you explain that last part?
Yeah. So when letters of marque and reprisal are given or like assigned, I guess, it deputizes the person who receives them. Given that they now have authority to do things like police emerging technology, that emerging technology could potentially come from other countries, which means that it would involve the international arena.
Okay. Let's the B subpoint. This corridor evidence. Did you read this card?
I did.
Can you explain deputization?
Yeah, so similar to LMRs, but slightly different, although you could use LMRs to do it. The executive has the authority to deputize local law enforcement, which means that if like the states are just not cooperating with federal initiatives, the executive will be like, what's going on, and just deputize everyone, which means that it can't, like, they just wouldn't care and wouldn't follow.
How does that interact with the F?
It doesn't need to. It's a
Okay.
like,
So it's not a solid test. That makes
oh, well,
sense.
I guess it's a no follow-on question.
Okay.
Like,
Let's talk. Just a quick clarification question on the courts kind of one. You say only Congress can grant oversight for exemptions from the law. What exemptions from the law does the AF create?
So when LMRs are given, they also there are like plenty of laws that criminalize hackbacks. One CFA is an example. When Congress grants LMRs, they are then thus like exempted from those laws.
So you
for
you
like
make
that
it
for those particular purposes. The ATL evidence says that when other people do it, such as the courts, they'd have to do broad.
okay.
Like
So the AF makes it legal for companies to hack certain people.
only people who have been given LMRs.
Who do
yes.
they make it legal to hack?
Whoever. So the LMR are, it's like given with an assignment. It's basically a contracting job. So whoever like is contracted, they would be contracted for a specific purpose, and they would be able to fulfill that purpose.
Okay.
All right. 720. 237. Is sent. Or is everyone here? Yeah, orders the K. Then, sorry, the K double trouble counter plan, the advantage counter plan, then the first advantage, then the second advantage. All right. Anyone not good? Cool. I wasn't planning on going for the neoliberalism critique in this debate, but the 2AC was so bad here that I have to go for it. They basically dropped a capitalism dissat, even if they win framework that outweighs and turns the case. Before me, the letters of market reprisal is roots in neoliberalism that furthers the goals of capital. The impact is the capital accumulation pushes it past planetary boundaries through warming, ocean acidification, and biodiversity loss, which ensures extinction via systemic collapse of the biosphere. And doesn't act, their warming effects on the other page doesn't apply because it's a question of broader ecological impacts. It controls the root cause of every part of the case. The market is obviously the root cause of emerging tech lacking regulation because companies lobby the government to have free reign over those things, and globalized distribution through the black market is a result of neoliberalism. Organized crime is a question of the profit motive, and the space weaponization is a result of the neoliberal drive to securitize. Wall isolates how it redirects precarity towards sustaining a national security state, which is a reason the countries have an incentive to go to war in the first place. They draw this ecologically unsustainable. The mirror card says there's way too much environmental impact to sustain it much longer. Capital is in the crisis of overaccumulation. Mitigation measures create free flowing cash for corporation, which expands the bubble of speculation and militarism, culminates in violent class, foster 21 loss investment, the growth of foreign profits, increase free cash into corporation, intensifying overaccumulation, stagnation, financialization, contradiction, undermine the dollar, arguments, rate system, key of it, can be part of the planetary ecological crisis engendered by capitalism. The richest of as skyrockets, such speculation, shares rise, carries the nature of meltdown stock, bubble starting to burst. The ratio of the GDP reaches 60% there. They shares around limits, barely $1 billion come up against resistance, has been declining. U.S. is head towards the Cold War, China financial war driven by U.S. short, but the economic hegemony by attempting to arrival spell disaster for the capitalist economy. The crisis is overaccumulation, external around what can be absorbed as capacity, energy invested, slow growth, financial expansion, glory, cash corporation results as speculation, unable to overcome stagnation, capitalism, the rational, the absence of depression, increases the system threatening crises. American corporate state repressed internally, aggressive externally. What is needed is increased standard of living on the lower income, improvement consumption, and the quality of life. It triggers World War III, but which is all of the arguments I made above. The first argument in the page is framework. Assessing the desirability of the plan against the alt must include the philosophical underpinnings of the 1AC. If we went linked to the 1AC's justifications, you reject any permutation as severance. Our interpretation is best. Let me do it to political tinkering, bracks out structural questions of how to prefigure alternative societal arrangements. Their framework is a tunnel vision that indoctrinates us into elite systems of power, which inculcates violent ideology and teaches debaters not to question that hegemonic structure is fair, preserves after choice while holding them accountable for the choices made regarding the presentation and construction of the 1AC instrumentality decide. Their political orientation gets into the grip of neoliberal discipline, accelerates our links and disproves the permutation. Bloom 16. The role of states rationalize cultivating power macro mentality, public individuals succeed within the neoliberal order. Displaying power has been expanded to account for the psychological crib, displaying the orders holder of individual CEOs are held as thorn leadership, sovereignty, as active fantasy, support and strengthen self-discipline with neoliberal individuals are affectively driven as sovereignty. They appeal less and promise of great individuals of agency perceived to be lacking, and their existence as agency lists disciplinary studies of neoliberalism. That comes first. Extinction as here in a environment dominated by threat property, capitalization, and the state is guardian of law and order. Agency is concerned through power relations, that inavailability and profit. If we leave the market, the workers matching and push aside the responsibility. Agency is misplaced and build up becomes more exploitative in the absence of human life. We not only look at what produce outcomes, but questioning the ideological framework that gives us the power of globalization and weakens positive personality of human agency. The deconstructed epistemological condition of any liberalism possible and offer alternatives outside market card and alternatives outside it. Don't look to their offense. The game is globally fair. Everyone goes by size. There's always a counterattack excuse for inevitable because of speed deset, the infinite dissets and T and the new app. Our offense outweighs. A is a question of bar survival that's above. B framework cannot be chosen without deciding what value it has. Their arguments collapse into deeper questions of what is debate's purpose. So the K comes prior. The link to the link debate. I'm gonna do that in the permutation. They say the app is desecuritizing. Clearly, it's not. It's about this card's about how the civilian sector is better than the military. We have problematized that divide. The Grewal card says the police are part and parcel of the apparatus and control that function together in order to control society in such a way that public-private cooperation redirects that precarity towards sustaining the national security state, which means the police sustain the national security state. Even so, the link debate will further disprove this. The permutation stuff. Both of them link are severed. The links demonstrate the way that app aligns with neoliberal logics. One is the cyber privatization link, not about cybercrime, but about your literal deputization of hackers into the purview of the state. This is a dream of the ruling class, enabling them to protect their financial and political interests in cyberspace by striking fears of the population and co-opting private actors who might be able to challenge their elite monopoly, who are destabilizing to follow their financial goals, protecting the elite in cyberspace. That securitization naturalizes the social production of crime as whatever threatens elite interests by creating a new bogeyman of the hacker versus the cyber pirate who's now been co-opted as the MO of neoliberalism. It distracts from structural critique of the social relations that underpin cybercrime and disempowers hacktivist activity that holds police accountable. Proven by one of the 2AC Carlson says that they make the government contract private companies to hack people as part of the state corporate apparatus of militarization and control. It turns case by creating the government and business of monopoly on force and cyberspace, which justify continuing offensive cyber repressions, corporate espionage, and the distribution of destabilizing tech globally for the profit motive. Turns case. That's not going to read that card. Second, organized crime link. Their strategy to reproduce neoliberalism and turn cape by solidifying a distinction between legitimate and criminal economies. Mercial, allowing conventional view focus on cartels corrupting institutions or U.S. as well-intentioned leader fighting scourge. Legalization focused on all cartels and negative political economic dimension. Fails considered impact of free trade and obvious more deregulation. U.S. policy should need to maintain a favorable climate. Ideology makes several use policy, at least in all American neoliberal policies to increase the drug industry, hegemonic products and NAFTA. Use drug control as previous arrest groups who resist financial sector involvement has never been regulated. Surprise, liquidity, emphasizing responsibility of the U.S. and Mexico's traffic. If firms a framework question, debate should be about the assumptions means they separate. There's neoliberal productivity. This set of data the perm is structured by a neoliberal cost-benefit analysis that attempts to make the alternative more productive at achieving its goal. The K turns the case. There's no net benefit. Advantage count. Oh, double trouble. We're not going for it. Asian counterpoints to reject the argument that the team uncooperative federalism will have all the other theory stuff. Solvency advocate will be in the Y&R too. Advantage counterpoint not going for it. See the permutation. Conditionality will be in the Y&R case. At the top, there are a bunch of logical holes in their internal link. One, the global open source stuff can't be solved. The U.S. cannot interfere in countries like Russia or China if they want to distribute tech over the dark web or stuff like that. Second, is cyber privateers is not enough. They're random people in their basement. If the government doesn't have the capabilities, why do these random people have those capabilities? Terrorism cannot cause extinction. They're incompetent and cannot organize the operational capacity for large-scale harm. Wall systems never come close. Security systems, not going to read that card, but this implicates everything they've said because they can see the thesis claim the terrorists really suck at their job and aren't going to be able to develop a massive terrorism, bioterror, eco-terror weapon that could cause extinction. Anyway, there's no bioterror. This pink red team, biological danger, illustrated terror, national selection, works against devastation, random contagion, trade off. The world has seen just one attack which killed no one. It's difficult condition or complex trade by Gina. I don't think we were close to investigate easier for public protectors and antibiotics that overcome APR and develop vaccines, habits, availability, negative bias, inflate the odds. Emerging threat stuff, regulation of emerging tech will never happen because the military always needs to gear, but the unregulated tech does not cause anything close to extinction. Throw it doomsday scenarios without a clear path to extinction. Their only argument is that tech is coming now. Our argument in Dice that logic insists that it's alarmist. It's empirically overemphasized. LB 16 each generation is common because the MEDC for generation view tech is by now. In Broward, there was a release of 25 MPH we killed. Pastor's device of Satan. The argument is circular. The argument about OCOs and perceptions of larger states doesn't make any sense. OCOs, private hackbacks don't cause war. I'll finish the card. Lewis 20. Opponents have no interest in capturing exactly produce equal retaliation. Inver escalation never occurs. States look risk. Evidence suggests controlled by advanced states. Neither Russia, China would attack U.S. Iran could, but only when in armed conflict. North Korea is not capacity. The organized crime stuff. It's not connected to truly destabilizing themselves. It's just drugs. It's inevitable. How do you expect to solve cartels that use drug routes? They only might solve interdiction through cyberspace, which doesn't matter. Other advantage. First is no spillover. You legalize it for cyber criminals, but you don't do anything on a continuing basis in space. You're realizing a shoddy spillover claim that realizing Congress doing things on the road. They're so gridlocked they won't. Now what's the card on the double trouble account plan? Second, China, Russia, and Japan already have ASATs, which proves deterrence for a space war. No space war. 60 years of militarization under much more fraud circumstances disprove it. Treaties and mutual destruction prove because satellites are crucial to functioning. No risk of space war. That's White's 11. Unfortunately, MID uses space and use space weapons risk diminishing retaliation countries and disrupting the use space. So all space become vital for military installations, for commerce and communications, meaning that. Mark, meaning that. In fact, you're gonna have to do the asteroid thing. That's fine. All right, I'm good.
All right. Okay. First, I want to talk about the alt to the K. What does it do?
I mean, wasn't answered in the 2AC. The alternative is the kind of interrogation of the social relations. It is more of a framework question. Our argument is the permutations going to sever the alternative as a strategy to challenge neoliberalism on an academic level and on an in-round level is sufficient to kind of question those hegemonic assumptions and break down the system.
So just like interrogating the one I see in this debate round is sufficient
Well,
to
no,
break down the entire
our
system
argument.
of
Our argument is
capitalism?
that's an ethical thing to do. Second is it's a broader framework that academics, activists, etc.
Wait, so you fiat
take.
that all activists and academics take this broader
No,
framework?
it's not. It's not
So
a
then
fiat
how do you
question.
solve it?
What we're saying is an ethical orientation to take, and it's try or die quite literally, because you can see that the system is unsustainable and going to collapse. So it's a question of whether you orient yourself towards or against neoliberalism.
I guess I'm just confused if we in this round orient ourselves against neoliberalism, like what does that do?
Well, we've read a bunch of arguments on framework as to how it fractures neoliberal instrumentality, how it provides broader
So like
space
I'm
for
gonna
question
go
hegemonic
and
assumptions.
take down the state, like.
I mean, I don't know if you will. Like, our argument is that in the mirror card is very specific that there's a neoliberal pressure, the state corporate apparatus, on academics, thinkers, intellectuals, individuals to comply with the instrumentality of neoliberalism and to give into the agency that they provide us. Our argument is that resisting that is a good idea.
Okay, so then how does the alt overcome those like pressures, I guess, is my next question.
Our argument is that we have to reject those pressures, and the alternative is an example of that.
Like we just say no, and then it all
I mean,
goes
it's
away?
not just say no. It's like our mirror card is very specific as to how interrogation, even in the absence of specific solutions, is a good thing, because diagnosing the disease of neoliberalism, kind of delinking from that matrix of agency that it gives us, enables more foundational challenges.
Okay, so then I guess if
again, 2AC did not make an argument here.
Sure, I guess if the perm is like do the AF, but we also acknowledge it's neoliberal and that's bad. Like, why doesn't that
doesn't make any sense? Like, why would the AF, if we win, the AF is an example of co-opting hackers into state corporate interests, then that obviously trades off an alternative that challenges that structure of power.
Wait, so will you defend like hackers in the abstract and like not associated with capital
our argument is that the AF is ideologically committed to a strategy that deputizes private, like subaltern actors and brings them into the purview of the state and just contracts them out to hack whatever the U.S. government wants.
Okay, so
that is messed up.
Not deputizing them is a good thing?
I mean, we don't think deputization is good, no. Okay. Prep just so I can talk.
Oh.
3 seconds.
Sending it now. Order is advantage 2, picking up on asteroids, infrastructure, wherever condo is, and then the uncooperative federalism counterplan. Mute yourself. Is anyone not ready? Cool. There's absolutely no risk of asteroids. There's our evidence says there's a 1 in a million chance that an asteroid will ever happen. Their only answer is that small asteroids aren't big, which our evidence answers because it says there'll never be an asteroid. And if there was one, you just deflect it. Wouldn't be perceived as a nuke. An asteroid hit Russia last year. We didn't nuke them. What's up? Infrastructure. We'll concede the plan is bipartisan. It takes out these say no deficits on uncooperative federalism capital. We're not going for the condo page. Condo is concede impact. We're not going for it. There's no offense. Condo is good. We get however many we read, especially in a new active base. Key neck flex and competitive activity. This topic is awful for the negative literature. See advocates for reform thousands of apps. There's no unified net ground when you option compensate for reaction ground. Ideological flex. Only indicated cap on the same round. Education proliferating. More strategies key to the critical education. The skews Neville speed D's and T's make absolute equality impossible. Reject the argument. Not the team will concede reasonability for T theory based on arbitrary bad for debate. Dispo fails. It devolves into condo. It forces up perms. The worst answers. Uncooperative federalism counterplan. The counterplan solves the case by a spring federal follow-on. The government will enact the plan in response to massive state pressure, resulting in an identical outcome, but through an alternative process that allows the states to break the Fed-centric model of federalism that hamstrings renewable energy. The bring impact defense to the top. Warming outweighs A's of magnitude. It makes the extinction inevitable through sea level rise, destruction of oceans and forests, and nonlinear cascading of environmental risks. Charred avoid tipping points to make it irreversible. It outweighs nuclear war end times. And 6, we consider climate change a great step back to extinction. Nuclear war is unlikely to cause extinction. Few for fire powers would be a suicidal extinction would be more possible if other country states were present to nuclear change. Perm due to the counterpoint, it severs the only mandates states, not the federal government. There's no conceivable interpretation of their mandate that could be the counterpoint voting issue for ground fed. Can't be states that we deem in 89 the political you need to distinguish from separate states. It's commits of this single skip that card. The circumvent inherency counterpoint bad. Our counterpoint is good. 1, no link to offense. It's not a vanilla process counterpoint that Fiat's planned after convoluted steps. Competition debate proves that state bargaining is a distinct option. 2, the internal net benefit ensures there are good debate on cooperative federalism. Good. Bad is deep lit. 3, testing. It's not a top goal test federal, and it's artificially insulated for the rigor. 4 is neg flex crossfly from condo. It's key on this topic. 5, hard debate is good. The perm other issues stuff is intrinsic. Functionally, the counterpoint has an offer to the federal government. The perm ends cooperation. Textually, it adds extrinsic words. All territory justifies word games. It makes offense impossible. No net benefit or DA links to AFA could have added unlimited additions to compensate for negate the effect voting issue for grounded. It doesn't test your maintenance. That's called an opportunity cost. The counterpoint does. The plan is bad because it foregoes the situation and conflicts by removable position. The foreign affairs arguments group. The next 2 cards. It's the foreign affairs bad. It solves nuclear war. Lewison 9 sides should the federalism the minimize comments of federalism establish the rebellion to comments are made inevitable because they consolidate democracy. Checks the outburst by expanding centralization. Sites up and support that the autonomy and fosters accumulation of entries to limit the hostility. Federalism and dampen rebellions to Spain, Philippines, Nicaragua, and the Ethiopia. Federalism undermines military appeals. Builds the support for the peace autonomy. It transforms effects. Say no arguments. They can't get this one. We can see the plan is popular. If the Fed agrees, solvency is absolute. It becomes identical to the plan, and it's definitely sufficient for the case. The Fed will say yes. It has all 50 states demand that the federal government enact the plans. Prefers specificity. Generic say no arguments don't assume the mechanism of the plan that creates undeniable leverage. 1, it demonstrates massive and historical unprecedented support for the plan. Literally every state crying out will be heard in Washington. Raises the issue salience. 2, it stops all cooperation. Says a signal the states have control and will get what they please. The Fed relies on states for policy interpretation. That's leave. Also, conditioning funding doesn't take out eternally because the states will don't have the room to do renewable energy now. But the plan creates it. The deputization stuff. It's not responsive. Deputization doesn't allow continuation of federal initiatives in states that have already severed initiatives. But circumvention doesn't matter if we win the say yes debate. The federal access before it matters. No deputization. 1, the plan is small / popular. There's no reason why for backlash. The cross by the bipartisan stuff. 2, Biden will negotiate contrary to Trump lashouts because deputization is illegal. The states sue in response to Flacco. And 20. Portland sued the DHS and Justice Department agencies overstepped the constitutional limits to use federal enforcement lawsuit cites unlawful deputization of federal agents. Complaints today anti-commandeering doctrine. The Fed cannot require the states to enforce the federal law. Suing skip that card. Permutation do both doesn't solve the net benefit. 1, it's cooperative and not conflictual. There must be a break between the states refuse the Fed to create space that implements further cooperative roles. That's the government with evidence. The perm resolve removes the conflict by aligning them as partners for the onset. Vaporize the benefits of bargaining. Leonard and Tanwalk suggests the states actively refuse the states should either be served as rivals or allies. For new case for to recognize the value of friction by ensuring a co-op, but conscious divisions working together. Friction fosters dialogue, clarifies the accountability and encourages participation on co-op. Prefers ongoing co-op to sparking beneficial resistance before the states are freely declined. Little roommates and states of bargain have objections. The stuff about Biden, Biden's not doing anything. Foxon 21 after Trump hostile to climate change. The U.S. is under the Biden, which is dressed as a party controls the Congress does not do enough. That means as Fed will solve the climate change and COVID occupies the resource legislation will take round blocks. So Trump and regulations cut the card there. The stuff about red states are once the evidence says that they red states will follow on and the blue states are sufficient to solve.
Can we get a mark copy? Just because you marked a few cards.
Yeah.
I have not gotten
Or
it
it
yet.
should be sent.
Just got the email there. Okay, yeah, I got it. Download it.
Let me know when you're good.
Okay, yeah.
Okay, we have 9:51 starting now.
Stop prep, 348. I have 2 cards to send out. It's sent. I should probably I'll put the prep in the chat. Okay, the order is going to be the cyber advantage, or the OC's advantage, sorry. The LMR's advantage, the infrastructure DA, the K, uncooperative federalism counterplan. Okay, is anyone not ready? Cool. Emerging technology risk extinction. The 2NC drops the nanobots impact that causes eco-terrorism because terrorists deploy nanobots to literally eat the biosphere and point atomic bombs, which means they weaponize asteroids that compensate all of the Earth with all existential independently metamaterials risk extinction by undermining secure strike capabilities, which risk nuclear war. And the plan solves private sector hackbacks by limiting the scope with licenses. The first argument was that we don't solve global intelligence cyber operations. Do solve our piece of 1AC evidence indicates that they're not limited by restrictions because they can go globally. But they are even then our scenario is only about non-state actors, which means even if actors like Russia and China don't cooperate, they have to developing the technology, or nor are they omnicidal because they actually believe in things like mutually assured destruction. The next argument is the terrorist suck doesn't assume tech advances that diffuse capabilities like 3D printing and nanotechnology, which makes this technology now ubiquitous. The tourist evidence, not alarmism. Developments are coming now. The Pinker card just says it takes a while. Our evidence indicates it's happening now and only accelerating because there's lowest barriers of cost and increased intelligence capacity means they're increasing now. I'm not going for the bioterror impact, so you can see the impact defense of that. Internal link evidence says we do solve organized crime because we can cut off the funding stream. As for the Kessinger evidence, they drop the failed states impact because the failed states ultimately risk extinction because of great power intervention within regional conflicts. The independent private hackbacks do escalate. There was no warrants extended. Our evidence says that private actors misattribute because they don't have the proper technology, which means they accidentally escalate, which means that answers are only warrant, which is red lines. Go to the LMR's advantage. Space asset vulnerabilities go nuclear via nuclear preemption. Independently stops large-scale deforestation. I'm not going for the asteroid strike argument. Even then, asteroid strikes are existential. Even if we don't, asteroids are. I'm not going for the asteroid strikes internally. The first argument there is it's only for cyber criminals. Our internal link evidence is awesome. It says that inspires Congress to do in other domains, even if there is gridlock in the status quo. They don't answer internally specific policy issues about foreign affairs authority. Yes, space war doesn't assume NSAs. Their evidence is only about nation states following red lines, but not non-state actors. But even then, even if they don't attack commercial space assets, they'll attack the things that control those space assets, which triggers conflict. The space weapons card's only about fighter jets and space are internally called saddle cups and attacks on the infrastructure. The MAD does not assume NSAs who don't have the same calculus, which is the Taurus evidence. Go to the infrastructure dissent. They drop the straight turn. They won't pass now because of dem infighting, which is the Mindel evidence. The plan is broadly popular. The 2AC evidence is the plan is popular among all constituencies and that winners win because people follow the leader in the context of reforms. That means it's even external infrastructure impact. That's the dissent to the NELIP. All the Hammond Armstrong says it's a prerequisite to stop every threat and causes cascading failures, which means we literally can't sustain life on Earth. It's not a net benefit to the uncooperative federalism kind of plan. They didn't say that in the 1NR when conceding it, and we didn't make a links and a benefit argument, so no 2NR spin. Go to the K. They can't go for root cause and also can't solve the root cause since all their links are not unique. They don't access it either. Not everyone is developing for the purposes of capital. Tor says they're just some bad people out there that want it. Crime is not a profit motive. Other factors like seeking power, internal link evidence is that profit incentive is necessarily key to incentivize people to stop crime because they'll sign up for the job to earn money. They are already in space. Question of defending space assets not warrant my profit motive is only reason people attack in space. The framework rolled about is determine desirability implementation. There's two reasons. First, predictability. 1AC was built around defending the hypothetical consequences. Shifting components zaps that often by forcing debate over an infinite number of orientation towards policy politics, impact is fairness, debates again. The only thing the ballot can do is endorse a particular model as desirable. Second rejoinder, the link's supposed to be causal, and alternative must solve them, or else it's not unique to decide. The impact is clash, validating consequences, research the only way. I determine whether one sees a good idea if they can't translate abstract theorization and concrete analysis. It proves they have not internalized literature and can't effectively apply it. Av choice does not solve because there's an infinite number of orientation, which is inevitably skewed to the debate. The first argument was instrumentalism. Just said there's no internal link to it. Voting F doesn't mean you believe in the state nor good things, just a condition for victory, which means the clash internal link turns their offense. The next argument was the epistemology. Warrant epistemology flows F. Regard 18 reports contain analytical markers based on political ideology. Estimates ignore possibilities to offer is alien about reduction in poverty, life sense of education, healthcare, forest dynamic never happened. Overpopulation, DDT, ozone, metals, decon, waste, assets of health handle, fish recovered, expanding, forest expanding, waste recycled, phosphorus reclaimed, TOC per capita, they have increased innovation, accelerating rapidly, hold economic growth, for active innocence, mortality, more wars, at any point, having critics claim it's not then, not now. The next argument, the next argument was the permutation. Do both cells return any residual link to the plan? They're wrong about the only real link argument is the securitization link. They can't go for the cyber link because there's no card substantiating it, but they're wrong about this. Our internal link evidence says devolving authority to the military solves their securitization links, even if it seems counterintuitive. Remember, the only cyber link card they've read is about securitization, and our evidence indicates that we do better about desecuritization. The pro-crime link is only about legalization. It's also a link of omission. The UCF counterpoint. No impact to warming because new issues and intervening actors mitigate the test worst routes necessary framing way the F versus the counterpoint differences do have impacts, and we definitely outweigh on time frame. Uncooperative federalism, I'm going for the deficits, say no, conceding plan bipartisan not get out. This is about the fundamental structure of the counterplan. The federal government likes having supremacy of the states, so there's condition funding to gain cooperation. They haven't not read any evidence on this, which you strongly err af. Even then, permutation to the counterplan and the counterplan of other issues limited intrinsicness is justified when the counterplan's not germane to the affirmative. Others are necessary to key to best policy option, test their germaneness to the benefit, which follows infinite regression of process counterplans to steal the F and test actual opportunity cost. There, it is not limiting intrinsic at all because it includes it doesn't include any external words from the client in the counterplan. There is a bright line for limited intrinsicness. It's only worse, only functionally intrinsic with no scramble permutation, which doesn't justify functional and textual intrinsic. Because you can't read terms to explain counterplans. They don't justify against tricky advantage counterplans or picks. Even then, against the word ban of the counterplan, they can use other words except the entirety of the plan, which means it doesn't justify against the ban perm. And theory is not a justification because just because a counterplan exists in literature doesn't mean they have a right to it.
We have an amount of time, 2:34. Order is counterplan Oh wait, Maggie's not with her yet. Never mind. Oh, she is. Okay. Counterplan K. Sorry, counterplan infrastructure straight turn. The K, then case in the order of the 1AC. All right. Everyone good? Awesome. The counterplan almost assuredly solves the entire case by causing federal follow-on, but it's response to massive state pressure that is non-negotiable, but which means all we have to win is a little bit of risk of internal benefit and some risk of solvency, and cumulatively, it should outweigh warming outweighs yes impact. The one there did not have a warrant here. Why warming didn't cause extinction other than it's time, this question of time frame. One of our evidence's job is it causes nuclear war in every region because of regional resource shortages and migration crises, and G evidence in the 1 and C says it causes cascading non-linear effects in the biosphere, taking out keystone species, causing ocean acidification, making all resources like food, water, energy, etc. more scarce, and cumulatively culminating in everyone dying. But it's just more important to outweigh by 1 trillion times. They say it's a question of time frame. The ask obviously is low. When's the next time that we're going to go to space war? There's no articulation as to why time frame matters. You can because magnitude should outweigh because because if you die from warming, you should default to solving that, even if you risk something in the short term because you can live to fight another day. They say no warranting here. We obviously did read evidence here. The 1 and C evidence is very, very good on that. The states have a massive leverage. The one that denies extended warrant, they can see specificity frames a deficit. The counterplan demonstrates a historically unprecedented support for the plan because the counterplan has all 50 states crying out in support, which creates undeniable leverage. They can see the 1 and C card saying it's a massive fiscal and financial and political cost to denying the states because they condition every single initiative, whether healthcare, environment, immigration, drugs, policing, etc., all of which the federal government relies deeply on the states for. So they'll be forced to acquiesce. They say the federal government can fund a couple arguments here. One is that we just durably, if they get durable fiat, we obviously get durable fiat. We've made the argument for the debate. The states do not back down until the federal government listens, which means that if the federal government tries to condition funding, the states will just call their bluff and they'll say no later. They say the federal government likes the plan. The federal government does like the plan. We can see the bipartisanship link. I'll explain why that is not a straight turn later, but the plan's bipartisan, which means that it does not take much impetus for them to do it. They can see that everybody likes the plan, which proves that if the states press them to do it with a lot of leverage, obviously they would do it and they wouldn't try to condition funding backwards. The perm stuff. At the top, we're kind of impactorial and germaneness here. Neg engagement is the only thing that should matter. You should reject any form of intrusiveness because it allows them to add additional actions to spike all neg ground like permutation, do the app, and anything that solves this impact on an advantage counterplan. Limited intrusiveness is totally arbitrary. What is the threshold for limited? What is it? There's no bright line here except for a bunch of text memo jumbo that was new in the 1AR. Every interpretation of textual and functional combination should be rejected because the 2AC did not say it. We did not. We base our block strategy off of there not justifying the permutations. The 1AR obviously does not to get it. Negative negation outweighs germaneness because even if we're not a little bit not germane to the mandates of a new app, because we didn't have generic specific strategy to a new app, it's a question of negative being able to engage, which is key to clash advocacy skills, any portable benefit of debate. They say process counterpoints are bad. They dropped every reason on the theory debate process counterpoints are good. This is an independent reason the perm is bad because they delete process counterpoints from the topic. They show the topic's terrible. There is no unified DA ground. There are thousands of apps and there's unanimous literature bias. We need, especially against new apps, process counterpoints to test the mechanism. And all it takes to get it's a new app with one card, just one card in the context of a process counterpoint saying certainty is key, saying statutes or federal government acting alone is key, and that's all you have to do. The textual stuff anyway is all new. She's rejected, but I answer it. It's these absurd outcomes like permitting ban the plan because it has the word not in it, so it's not textually intrinsic. Functional accommodation should be best, but the counterplan is both functionally and textually competitive in the first place. It uses different words from the text, and obviously does something different because it fiats the states with a plan fiats the USFG. They say is using other words in the text that regresses the word scrambles and incentivizes plan text with filler words to permute advantage counterplans. Anyway, for the third time, this is all new in the 1AR, so I shouldn't have to answer it. Is that it? Any other they didn't extend any other perm. The other issues, things totally arbitrary. Limited interest in this is not a definition. There's no bright line. The 1AR is not going to bring new stuff up. Infrastructure. Even if it was a straight turn, obviously the uncooperative federalism solves the straight turn. We never said that was a net benefit once the cross-sex. It obviously wasn't because, well, we've been clear for that debate that the counterpoint results in the federal government enacting the exact result of the affirmative. And the 1AR is totally new on the question of whether it links. So we obviously get to clarify that it was never a net benefit in the first place. We never claimed it was a net benefit. Clearly, obviously, the K. Not going for it, continue permutation, just test competition. Cross applications don't make sense, but they're new, and the 2 areas again to make them. I don't have a 3 NR. The affirmative. Terrorism stuff is not an impact. If they win any risk of saying no, this provides a damper on that. Terrorists are really stupid. They have no operational capacity because they just live in foxholes in the desert. They have no evidence substantiating that terrorists or non-state actors have the technology able to make an extinction level nano-bio terror weapon. That's ridiculous. Even so, our evidence says the U.S. can take them out. The OCO stuff, we can complete the card saying private actors don't miscalculate because there are basic countermeasures and mutual destruction solves everything. The LMR's advantage, there's no space nuclear war. Our evidence says that MID solved because satellites are crucial to everyone's operating in space, and 60 years is proof.
All right, we have 348 starting now. Okay. Here, let me just get set up. Order is, I'll do infrastructure, then the counterplan. Wait, my computer is not working. Okay. Can I get a thumbs up when people are good? Wonderful. Infrastructure collapse always Pamela Armstrong is the largest existential risk in the debate because of cascading failures. It makes it impossible to sustain life on Earth because we cannot survive without access to food, water, transportation. That always warming on time frame. Infrastructure collapse is coming soon if we don't pass the infrastructure bill. But only if is able to solve it through things like winners win. Now this uncooperative federalism solves thing. I'm gonna do a little bit of extrapolation from what the 2NR said on the say no argument. The 2NR said the way you should resolve the say no debate is that the federal government does not want to coalesce to the states because they do not want to give up their power. They do not want to give up the supremacy clause, which is our Gardner evidence, which says that they will just condition funding to the states to try to get them to acquiesce. But the NEC has durable fiat, which means that the states will hold up and eventually acquiesce. But by the time the federal government eventually says yes, infrastructure will have been off the table because it will no longer be debated on, which is our non-unique evidence from the 2EC, which means that the counterplan cannot solve the internal link to the net benefit because infrastructure is no longer on the table and there's no mechanism for winners win or for providing gaining PC to pass infrastructure. I know this is new spin, but it is only in response to the 2NR's new spin on the say no deficit, which means that it's totally justified and an easy way for you to get out of this debate through time frame because warming takes years to reach existential levels, whereas the dissent happens immediately. Now go to the counterplan. And now go to the counterplan permutation to the app and have the states now cooperate with federal initiatives. It solves the internal benefit and isn't even really intrinsic. I'll walk you through it here. First the perm does the app, then the states don't cooperate with federal initiatives. It's all of the app and part of the counterplan because it removes a part of the counterplan that conditions that non-cooperation with on the federal government doing the plan, which means it's technically not separate or intrinsic because it includes the entirety of the plan and only part of the counterplan. But it also solves the internal benefit because states flexing their uncooperative federalism muscle per se is able to give them the ideas to solve warming in the future. Now I'm going to do the. Now, even if you think it's intrinsic, it's only functionally intrinsic, which was explicitly an argument that Piccone cross-exed about in the 2EC. It was not new in the 1AR, and the 1NR was way too light on it. Limited intrinsicness is justified. It's key to test the germaneness of the net benefit to the plan, which solves infinite regression of process counterplans that steal the app, like the penny-less counterplan, delay counterplan, and laundry list of other counterplans that exist within the CGR topic that have absolutely zero relation to the app. And it's key to testing actual opportunity cost of the app. Look, all we ask is that they read a link to the plan, which they have not met that burden. The function of limited intrinsicness is to test whether or not the counterplan has a link to the plan, which they do not, which means they don't actually test opportunity cost, which means they don't meet a lot of their neg engagement or flexing, so they don't actually engage with the app because they don't read a link to it. Our interpretation solves all of their offense. They can read a federalism dissent with the state's counterplan, but they need to read a link to the affirmative, which guarantees far more substantive debates, even if it is a new app. Look, new apps do not justify, hey, I can do whatever I want just because I feel like it. New apps mean you should have research generics like the federalism dissent ready to go on things with generic links. There is a bright line for it. It's only functionally intrinsic with no scramble perms. It doesn't justify functional and textual intrinsicness because we're only a functionally intrinsic perm, which means we can't read perm planks to escape disads. They're ban the plan, not competitive examples. A horrible example since they can just replace a different word in the plan, but those wouldn't even be theory doesn't justify the specific counterplan either because our interpretation solves all of their offense because they're able to read process counterplans. Just read a specific distance. Now this they say we destroy process counterplans. We don't. We just ask that you read a specific link to the app, which is not an awful burden to me. They say this topical is terrible for the neg. That does not mean that the neg doesn't get to read. Doesn't need to read links. Look, all we're looking for is a generic CGR link, which they've literally not even met. Not even met that burden, which is an impossible standard to hold the app to because the net can constantly read new counterplans about new things, not in the lit base, not even tangentially related to CGR, which prevents any affirmative preparation because it's a impossible to predict all of the different internal net benefits and new mechanisms that could not be tangentially related to the counterplan, but they didn't even do impact calc on why they're actually. Yeah, the textual stuff, the ban the plan example, I already went over. The word scramble perms are not justified because it would change the function. Because it would change the function. There is a bright line for it. It's only functionally intrinsic. Yeah, I already said that. The ban the plan not competitive example is a horrible example since they can replace another word like enact with the word ban, but even then they didn't do impact calc on why their interpretation outweighs. Easy out for you, infrastructure disad with the whole counterplan is delay, but the intrinsic perm is definitely justified because they've never read a link to the app specifically, which means that there's no opportunity cost to the plan.
Good debate.
Good debate.
Judges, you want cards?
Yes, please, and the perm text as well.
AFCAR doc is sent.
Hey, Neg, did you read the cards under the AT Say No spending header in the 1&R, Ryan or Kincaid?
Sorry, can you repeat that? My mic was way down.
You're good. 1&R counterplan, cards under the header solvency, AT Say No spending, Ryan and Kincaid. Did you read those?
Pat, did you read those? I don't think so. I don't think those were red. I think the Flaccus card was one red.
Okay.
They were not
just-
red.
Got it. Just making sure. Thank you. And then F to a C to the counter plan doesn't solve Say No Gardner card. Was that red?
Yes, that was red. I forgot to put that in the doc.
Yep. Thanks. All right, we're in. Sorry, Danielle.
How dare you? Just kidding. Bye.
See ya. We got MBA, we got GBN, we got judges. Wow, what a close debate, folks. Really good job. Court is the TOC, that's huge. So feel really good about that. The decision is a 2-1 for the affirmative from Glenbrook North.
Yeah, I sat, and before I give the RFD, I just want to say that this was an awesome debate. It was super close, and I really enjoyed getting to judge it. And congratulations to both teams for a fantastic season and to making it this far. The TOC amidst an obviously difficult year to debate. Judged both of you before. MBA, y'all are awesome, and it's been great getting to judge you and watch your season this year. I ended up voting neg. I think that the risk of a warming net benefit to the counterplan outweighs the risk of a deficit that would access the infrastructure impact, and I conclude the permutation is theoretically illegitimate. The short of how I resolved the deficit debate is that while I determined there's some risk of the delayed process of the counterplan not being able to access the grid impact, in the absence of a permutation, the AF really has no defense to the argument that uncooperative federalism is both necessary and sufficient to check warming, which will assuredly cause human extinction. So even if the AF is making some inroads into the deficit, I think the counterplan is still net more likely to resolve the infrastructure impact than the status quo is likely to solve warming. So really, to me, it came down to this permutation debate that the AF needed to win. The way I ended up evaluating this is that everyone's agreed that infinite AF intrinsicness, both functionally and textually, would be terrible for debate. It would make even advantage counterplans and picks untenable because the AF could always append something that would solve the net benefit. So really what this debate came down to for me is whether the AF has a logical and non-regressive bright line that would check the worst process counterplans while preserving reasonable opportunity for neg engagement. And so while I think the 2AR is out debating the 2NR on these specific issues, it felt like both sides were answering different terms. Like the AF is saying functionally intrinsic but non-scramble, and therefore presumably textually non-intrinsic perms provide sufficient recourse for AFs against generic recycled counterplans. I think the problem is that while the neg's argument is that the perm is textually intrinsic because it appends the word not, which is neither in the plan nor counterplan text. So there's not really any refutation to this by the AF. And since I like reading the counterplan text, I agree that the perm is textually intrinsic. That means given the debating by both sides, they seem to have agreed that the permutation is both functionally and textually intrinsic because the AF says it's functionally intrinsic, the neg says it's textually intrinsic, and there's not really a resolution of that. And so I think it's just very difficult for you then to beat the neg's regression standard on intrinsicness, because absent being able to defend a stable bright line for intrinsicness, like functional intrinsicness with no scrambled permutations, means that even if I grant you the most generous reading of the perm and agree that you meet your own interpretation, it just then magnifies a lot of the neg offense about being able to shift different interpretations of counterplan competition between debates in order to exclude different classes or different categories of counterplans. And I ultimately think that piece of offense for the neg outweighs a mitigated AF ground standard because they have defensive arguments about why it's not impossible to answer process counterplans in the world proposed by the negative. But yeah, this was a fantastic debate overall, and I'll leave it to the other judges.
I want to give GBN an opportunity to ask questions if they have any before I kind of go in. You good out there, GBN? Yeah. Okay. So yeah, frustrating debate to be left with for a while because I feel like there's a ton of really good debating going on, except I have like very few words spoken on some of the most important issues for my ballot. I ended up voting AF on the infrastructure DA solvency deficit outweighs the net benefit, but I sat here for like 15 to 20 minutes just reading the impact cards over and over again because I have basically no impact comparison between two dropped pieces of offense, basically. So let me walk through it for a second. Does the counterplan solve the AF politics link turns? The neg says uncooperative federalism solves the straight turn because the counterplan results in the Fed enacting the exact same plan as the 1AC. I want way more words spent here in the 2NR, given that this is like the most frightening push that they could make against the counterplan at the solvency level, specifically about Biden's PC in relation to the counterplan, because the question of how much PC Biden has to push infrastructure is more important than whether or not the counterplan results in the plan to me when it comes to resolving these politics link turns. The AF says delay, counterplan takes a while because of the process of Fed state negotiation. So Biden wouldn't gain PC from that outcome because infrastructure would be off the docket by the time the counterplan is resolved. Based on the evidence, I think the AF story lines up. I think the non-unique card is good and other things could get in the way of infrastructure now. The winner's win card is good on can't let PC wither, got to string together wins now. So the risk of the counterplan not getting resolved in time and or not being perceived as a victory for Biden seem high. Two things. Neg has an argument in the 2NR that says on the solvency debate proper, the Fed wouldn't condition funding because everyone likes the plan. The AF has it backwards. To me, that means the issue could just be dealt with quickly. The problem for this is that the AF has a card in this question, the Neg doesn't, on the question of whether or not the Fed might try to condition funding, which to me is the internal link to whether or not the fights are drawn out or not. So that's I'm AF on that mini question. The second question, the 1AR contains basically none of the 2AR words on the explanation of how the counterplan solves the winner's win turn, which is super frustrating. It's basically 1AR is doesn't solve link turns, 2NR is does solve link turns. So it's the way that I resolve this is if I don't evaluate any of the 2AR explanation, I don't know what I even do because it's just literally a yes, no question with no warrants. And then second, I agree somewhat with the 2AR explanation of the 2NR is saying things in the solvency debate on the counterplan that is somewhat new and how this explanation is wrapped up in the solvency debate that's also already happened and been talked about in previous speeches. So it's not enough for me to just outright reject the 2AR in this, which leads me to impact comparison. Conceded net benefit versus conceded advantage, that both basically have the exact same story as how you get to extinction. Resource scarcity causes global nuclear war. Both teams' evidence also is talking about non-linearity. It's just there's a crazy amount of overlap here. The things that I wish I had the final rebuttal saying that could have tipped the ballot is I don't have the neg and the 2NR saying nuke war doesn't cause extinction, only environment matters, even though you have a card that kind of says this. And I also don't have the AF saying infrastructure turns climate, even though your card says this. So I'm left with two competing potential impact calc ballots. Infrastructure outweighs because time frame and turns warming versus warming outweighs because environment and magnitude. And I end up going AF on this question of infrastructure outweighing because one, I think that time frame, even if magnitude matters more, does matter somewhat. Two, I think the AF gets to extinction. Three, I think their evidence is good on without infrastructure, our ability to solve climate would be hampered. And reading the internal link evidence to how the state's uncooperative federalism strategy solves warming, I don't understand how there could be a way for you to distinguish your internal link story in a way that means that you don't rely on infrastructure in any way. So I feel better making the bet that I should build up our infrastructure to solve for those problems instead of just kind of the solution of letting states do uncooperative federalism things to solve for warming, but could have been tipped by a couple more words or a card here or there. So it was just super frustrating on this, even more so for the neg because I ended up thinking that I was neg on the perm, and I have a lot of words written down there that I can talk about if you would like. But I mean, I noticed that there were people coming in there congratulating you, patting on the back, and that's kind of what it's all about for me. I think the biggest reason why online debate sucks is that you're not able to feel the community and the intensity and the physicality that comes with in-person debate tournaments. But luckily, it seems like you have the capacity to kind of be with your partner in person, be with your team in person. And ultimately, the things that you take from debate are those connections that you make with your squad, going into the heat of the battle, facing your opponents, building those ties, making those friendships, and that'll be there regardless of a couple words on impact calc. You know what I mean? That's what matters in the end. So congratulations on everything and really good debate.
I just want to start by saying congratulations as well. Y'all are both amazing teams. I'm so glad I've had the opportunity to judge both of you this year. Meacham, I think you're going to Harvard and you probably have a debate career there as well. So, 4 more years. Coney, I don't know if you're a senior, I'm sorry, but no, okay, you got time.
But Coney's a lowly junior. He'll be back.
Yeah, you'll be back. So I voted on the same thing that Theo did. I voted on the infrastructure case, solvency deficit outweighing the warming net benefit. I thought it was an extremely weird debate to judge and adjudicate because we all had to kind of insert our own opinions based on how we were reading the evidence about the solvency deficit timeframe and how much new extrapolation that we will allow. I think that the 2AR did a really good job of kind of couching the extrapolation that she was doing in the context of the infrastructure solvency deficit to respond to the solvency deficit explanation that was in the 2NR. And I think based on kind of the evidence questions that Theo was talking about, i.e. the AF having a specific card about why the federal government would condition funding and like get angry and there would be a massive delay versus like the bipartisanship cards that are not in the context of the specific process of the counter plan. It makes me think that there would be some delay that would cause these like uniqueness problems that their 2AC evidence does explicitly lay out, and even like says that gun control or immigration or whatever would be the next thing on the docket that would cause infrastructure to be delayed. But I don't know how much more you want to hear of decisions, but I basically voted on the same thing as Theo. I agree with what Tyler said about the perm. I also don't think that the perm solves the net benefit because they would just like stop doing federal initiatives. And so I just wish that instead, and I think that was kind of in the 1NR, and I just wish that instead in the 2NR, you just like said it doesn't solve the net benefit, didn't deal with the theory issue, and then spent more time on the infrastructure debate because I definitely think it was winnable and you just needed a little bit more impact calc. But great debate. Y'all are really good debaters.
I don't have anything. If GBN has anything for the rest of the tournament. Yep. All right. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Great debate. Good luck with the rest of it, GBN.
Thank you.